Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm your host, Jojo, and this is where we will navigate the mess together. That is mental, emotional, and spiritual. Let's get messy. Hi, everyone. So this week, we are going to be talking about a full 360 reframing of the concept of wellness. So have you ever felt like you're doing all of the work? Maybe it's all the self-help, the affirmations, the journaling, but there's just something that's maybe keeping you in those same patterns, those same looping mechanisms. And maybe it's like the same movie and you're just like, how do I get out of this movie theater? So today we're going to actually dive into that part, which is the subconscious that's actually running the show. And who better than to have Dr. Lisa Zaretsky from Zaretsky Wellness to really unpack what all of that means, coming back home to yourself through the lens of science, neuroplasticity, and emotional integration. So without further ado, Dr. Lisa, welcome to Inside Out.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
I just want to dive in. You talk about rapid transformational therapy. Can you tell us what that even is?
Yes. So it was founded by Marissa Peer, and she put together several different empirically based evidence models to put together this type of hypnotherapy that includes Gestalt, cognitive behavioral therapy, psychoanalysis, IFS, as well as hypnotherapy and regressive hypnotherapy. It also includes affirmations. And she put this together to get to the roots, reasons, and causes of what is going on in the presenting issues. And it's quite rapid. And it's one of the most profound tools that I am trained in. And I utilize it and I apply it to a hypnotherapy coaching program I developed. That's a 3-month program where I also incorporate other techniques, such as other empirically based techniques and innovative, such as compassion and inquiry. I'm an educator, so I bring in my understanding of curriculum and learning so that people can synthesize and apply what they learn and make sure that it sticks and is sustainable. And I also have I'm a clinical social worker, so I bring in all that clinical knowledge, and I'm trauma informed, so I bring that in. And I have my doctorate in cognitive sciences and cognitive diversity, so I bring in the understanding of cognition, including neuroplasticity, so that the results are sustainable. And what I see is not only are they sustainable, they continue to create, renew, expand in positive, transformative ways. So it's quite profound. And rapid transformational therapy is one of the techniques that I use in that program. And it is the deep dive we do for the hypnotherapy.
So there's a huge difference between traditional talk therapy and RTT. And like, what would you say is like the biggest shift that you've seen from someone who's maybe just done therapy for like traditional talk therapy for years and then coming to you being like, I need something different?
Yeah. So that's a great question. A lot of times when people are ready to do something different, they're also hit rock bottom and they're ready to live another way. They just can't go forward anymore. And they don't have to even believe what I have to offer is going to work. They just need to live another way. And once they've made that decision, that makes the results even more rapid. And what hypnotherapy does in this technique and the program that I do, it taps into the subconscious. And like you said in your introduction, the subconscious is 95% of our back operating system. It drives all of our decisions. It drives all of our actions because it's where all of the beliefs and perceptions throughout this lifetime, and if you believe in other lifetimes, because the mind goes with you wherever you go, it's consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's where they're all stored. And it doesn't mean that they're accurate. Most of the time they're limiting. And they're limiting or they're inaccurate or faulty based on the experiences and the perceptions from those experiences that we've had. And it could be due to a chronological age. It could be due to family influence. It could be due to societal, educational influence. It doesn't mean that it is accurate or that it's open or that it's soul aligned or in any way, shape, or form. Most of the time, if not all the time, it's limiting. And it's what holds us back, or it's what's causing whatever is in your way. And I mean that it could be a mental health condition. It could be a limitation that you've placed on yourself. It could be life functioning. It could be financial. It could be career, anything,
Totally.
relationship.
Yeah,
And
it's
so what it does
wild.
is it taps in. Yeah, it's incredible. And what I've seen is that it's incredibly rapid. So you can come to me for therapy and we'll chip away at it. And I'll even do conversational hypnotherapy throughout, the time. We'll chip away at it. However, there's always going to be the consciousness or the default systems that are going to be protective, because the mind has this rule that's called rules of the mind, where it's going to take you back to what is familiar to avoid pain. And it fools people. I call it the delusion of the illusion, that what is familiar is comfortable. And they are absolutely not the same thing.
It's exactly why so many of us are feeling stuck. I feel like we think we lack willpower, but what I've even learned through like my own, healing journey and like rewiring all of these limiting beliefs and competing desire gridlocks and going really in on myself is that these subconscious stories and wirings and things that they're programmed, they're almost like planted there from society or our parents or our lineage or just the way that we've grown up. And we don't think that we can reset that because we're so like, that's also the limiting belief that we think, well, I was just raised this way and I can't necessarily break out of that. But I love what you said. And that brings me to what hypnotherapy is, because I think a lot of people would say, oh, hypnotherapy, like, oh, what does that mean? Like, am I going to like lose control? Like, how am I going to really like heal? Like, how can I take charge of my healing journey if I'm being hypnotized? I think to me, that's always been like, wait, what? Because I've never done hypnosis. What would you say to someone being like, oh, I don't know about that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of limiting beliefs and perceptions about that also, and fear. And fear is caused by limiting beliefs also, and resistance to change, or resistance to the flow of what's happening, and at that moment in time, and what we have control over and what we don't. And so, number one, to clear up certain misconceptions. People think they're not in control. I even had one client come in and said, "Are you going to make me cluck like a chicken?" And we both laughed because, that's entertainment, number one. But number two, there was a belief there. And yet she was done. She was ready to live another way. And so that belief didn't really get in the way. It just had to be cleared up because she was ready to go to the subconscious and release the things that were in her way, the beliefs that were in her way, because beliefs create thoughts, and thoughts drive emotion and create emotion, and emotion creates behavior, and behavior creates action. And that's just the domino effect. And that is actually the trajectory of how things happen.
And
the beliefs are formed.
Create your reality.
Correct. Thank you. I was getting there. So thank you for saying that. And also those beliefs are shaped and developed by perceptions through our experiences through time, space, and anything in between. So with that said, you had mentioned earlier that the subconscious is 95% of our operating system, and that our consciousness is only that 5%. And we think that's what's driving our life, and it's not. And so it acts as a default system. But what happens when you go into a hypnotherapy session and you do a deep dive, especially with regression, but even in self-hypnosis, when you're doing that induction, you're bypassing the default system and the conscious mind. And what happens is that your nervous system goes to rest. It goes to sleep. However, you're still in control. And your mind will only take you to where it's ready to go. And I have experienced that time and time again, even as a clinician, as a hypnotherapist. I have seen that the mind will take you where you're ready to go. The difference is between, going back to your original question, somebody who comes for counseling, regular therapy, and hypnotherapy, is that the mind is ready, but the conscious prevents you from going places. So when you bypass that, the mind will take you where you're ready to go, because we're tapping into the subconscious and we get right to the roots, reasons, and causes without the defense. However, somebody is still in control. People who have to go to the bathroom, they'll say, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So we'll come out, they'll go to the bathroom and come back. And usually that's happening because their mind needed a break, or their conscious mind was saying, hey, wait a minute. And I've had people do that and they've come back, and eventually they don't have to go to the bathroom anymore. They can go for 3 hours without going to the bathroom. So going to the bathroom was also the conscious mind coming in and saying, wait a minute. But once the mind gets comfortable and realizes it's okay, I can do this, I can go back, I'm not reliving anything. It's like a movie screen or a computer screen. I'm just reviewing it so that I could find out exactly what is causing these things that are in my way, or that are making me feel this way, or that are making me act this way, or creating these patterns, or creating these repeating things going on in my life, so that I can transform them and I can make the positive changes that are sustainable going forward, and I can live the life I desire, and I can continue to create that. And so once that happens and they realize they're not reliving anything, and if it's uncomfortable, you can lean into that discomfort because you're reviewing it and you're seeing that, hey, not only can I handle discomfort, the discomfort is being released and I can create something new. And so I see that time and time again. And once they do that, and then I have the program because I believe reintegration is possible, and integration is important, and making those connections similar to like a psychedelic assisted psychotherapy framework. The program that I do is 3 months. It includes that. And a lot of times people will come back the following week, which is part of that integration piece, but it's making connections to be able to create a blueprint going forward. And I'll say to them before they do the deep dive, you're going to experience a bunch of things after the deep dive. In a way, it's like doing surgery. When you go, you remove something, you're removing beliefs. So people have all these different things afterwards. Some people sweat profusely. Some people go to the bathroom repeatedly. Some people will feel very energized. Some people will sleep, and I'll say, take that day, reintegrate. I always say go to nature, because nature has a way of reintegrating you as well. And the energy of nature is so important. And if you think of nature, everything just flows without our control. The leaves bloom and then they fall off and then they come back again. We can't make that happen. The sun rises and it sets. There's nothing we can do about that. It'll rain and then it'll set. So I give people that example of that energy of nature, and knowing that that's going to happen with you too. You're going to really recognize what I have control over and what I don't, and integrating in that frequency of flow helps you to integrate into that frequency of flow. And then the next week they come back and I'll say to them before, and then they'll see what I'm talking about afterwards. The thoughts will circle, but they have nowhere to land. Why is that? It's the most odd feeling. And it's happened to me too, because these thoughts are so familiar, but the beliefs that they were attached to have been released. And that's when the work begins.
So I want you to walk us through like what the actual experience is from start. Like what would someone want to, or what would they expect walking into a session or a 3-month run with you?
Yeah. So of course. So it depends on what the presenting issue is. So I've had people come in for addiction. I've had people come in for PTSD. I've had people come in for financial blocks, wanting to up their game career-wise or financially, relationship issues.
Let's dive into relationships.
You got it. So there are people that continue to get into uncomfortable or relationships that don't suit them or serve them. It's not what they're looking for. They're always the giver, or, there's so many different issues. And so the common theme amongst all these, Jojo, is that what I see is people are disconnected from themselves. So they can come in with whatever presenting issue it is. And when I do the intake, we do a thorough intake, and then the first session is a roadmap.
So when you say
And
intake, what do you mean?
I'm asking for their history, all of the things that they've gone through. It's a
Like
paperwork that they
relationship
fill out.
history, for instance.
Everything,
Okay.
everything history, because this is where my clinical background comes in and my educational background. I like to see from an aerial view, and I like to look at patterns and data, right? So I look at it as a data-driven type process. My intake is very thorough, and it brings into consideration my clinical and my educational background, and all of my background in cognition as well as emotion and mental health. And then we do an RTT influenced roadmap, but also that roadmap is more than that. It is also utilizing my educational background in terms of learning and developmental trajectory and how people synthesize and apply information. And it takes into my clinical background healing and what is required for trauma informed care, because most of the time there is some kind of trauma response, if nothing else. And if there's disconnection, the nervous system is usually disconnected and they need to integrate. So I take just every data you can think of: biological, chronological, background, history, development. And then I examine that. And then we do a roadmap. Where have you been? Where are you now? And where do you want to go? And we also take into consideration in that roadmap perceptions, like who loves you? Who do you love? What are your passions? What are your strengths? What are your interests? How is that going to influence, and how has it influenced this roadmap? Not just where are your challenges, but what else do you have to offer on this journey? Because a lot of times, whether it be in mental health, hypnotherapy, education, people's strengths as well as their interests get lost, right? So it's all about the challenges. And the mind is hearing that too. So the mind needs to hear everything, and it needs to hear where you're going and what your desires are going forward. So in mental health, you create goals. In education, you create goals. Here, we create desires, and the desires create destinies. So, what destinies are you heading towards, and where are your desires leading you? So, once we get a really good roadmap of that, and I can typically, through that process in that session, see what door to go through. And I have yet to see somebody come in that's fully connected to themselves or spiritual higher power, and what I call the infinite, which is the heart, mind, God connection. Because if you think about it, if you go from your heart to your mind, there's that cohesiveness, and that's what we wind up reconnecting in these sessions as well. And then after that's done, and that's permanent, once you do this work through the subconscious mind, then it's the heart, mind, God, higher power connection. And if you think about it, and I'll show you, I know that your viewers are not seeing this, but you're seeing this, and viewers can do this with their hands. They can take it from their heart, and they can make that cohesiveness to the mind and then to God or higher power. And then it has to come back. So it's coming back through the mind into the heart. Then it comes back into the heart, through the mind to the higher power. And if you think about that, that's an infinite symbol, right, as you go forward. And once that's flowing, things start to change, right?
I love what you were just saying about the mind, heart, and God connection. That's exactly what my mental, emotional, spiritual, messy framework is. And it's not exactly like heart, mind, God, but it is that circuitry, that circle, because mental, emotional, and then for me, from emotional, it goes out because heart goes out and then it taps back in. So it's like that circle. And actually, I see it more as like a spiral because it just like is ever continuing. Well, circle's more ever continuing, but like for me, it's like that spiral thing. So I love that. That's like the connection.
That means that you're heart led. So when your heart is going out, you lead with your heart. That's so beautiful.
That's funny that you say that because I definitely am heart led, and a lot of relationships that I've even seen myself get into, the people are more head led, like head forward or mental, and the logistics and the their minds totally get in the way. Like, I want that to be that infinity sign where we're both in that continuous dance. So I really like what you were saying there. That was really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too, because when somebody's leading with their heart, they're connected. They're connected with themselves. Their mind and their heart are connected. They're connected with a higher power. They're doing the spiritual work because one leads to the other. And, I think that, and they become more conscious, right? So even if they're operating from a more higher conscious place, and that's evolving because things are connected, there's going to be continued growth. The growth gets stunted, or the fragments and the disconnect and the chaos often comes from that disconnection and that unawareness. Awareness is key. And the higher consciousness works, so the more conscious you become, the more aware you become. And the more aware you become, the more observant you could become. And once you're more observant and you're aware, you can be reflective. And once you're reflective, you can be insightful. And once you're insightful, you can have introspection. Once you can have introspection, you can have expanded perspective. And that's so key. Having expanded perspective requires you to be able to have multiple perspective, and that's required for a relationship. So in the cognitive world, we call that social cognition. However, in the relationship world, it's relational cognition, right? It's and there's a word for it. They call it EQ, emotional intelligence. I just think it goes beyond emotional intelligence. I think it's something that has to be developed over time, and it requires that connection.
We need spiritual intelligence. Like, where's that?
Yeah, I think that has to be sought. I think that people get to a pain point, and I believe that pain point is made for growth, and that drives us to seek, right, and to grow spiritually. There's the tree of knowledge, and then there's the tree of life. And so knowledge can only take you so far. It's the wisdom that's applied, that you learn, that's innate, that I think really leads to growth. And knowledge can take you to a point of growth, but then it's really watering those seeds and bringing it to life that creates the wisdom and the growing and the expansion. And if you think about spirituality, we're all born into this world, knowing something, and we forget it when we come. We're here for some reason or some path, and there's a lot of pain along the way. And those pain points lead to either growth and expansion and change and a letting go of the old, or it leads to this perpetual numbness and disassociation, disconnection, projection, and a place of, bless you, a place of always having to be right, because you can't, you don't want to know anymore. It's this comfort level. It's not even comfort, it's familiar, right? But you think it's comfortable. And that creates a lot of mental health, personality conditions, relationship issues, all of those things. And so spirituality and spiritual growth is very different than religion and religious observance and religious growth. It's very heart-centered, and it requires, in my opinion, and this is from experience as well as professional, those connections that we were talking about, mind, heart, God, higher power, whatever you call it. And some people go through really challenging times like addictions, and they get to AA where there's a spiritual component to that, or the people I work with, they find their way. However it may be, it may not be the same for everyone. It's absolutely not. But I see this spiritual intelligence, at least in terms of consciousness, start to occur. They start to learn, they start to come out of this 2D that we see. And in the work with the hypnotherapy that I do with them in that 3-month program I was telling you about, they start to not only see a bigger picture, they start to see what's possible beyond logic or beyond what their beliefs were or ever could be, beyond their paradigms. And they start to get in touch with something that they knew was always there, and recognize that there's this inner wisdom, which I call the internal GPS, that knew it all along, but it was disconnected from the inner voice, which is the mind, that often was acting as the self-critic. And so how do you connect that internal GPS, that inner wisdom, with the inner voice? Is that you transform the inner voice to become a cheerleader or something like that, that supports you rather than, supports these new beliefs that we're creating, rather than the limiting beliefs. I can't, you don't belong, you're not enough, what makes you good enough for this, why you, all of those limiting beliefs, it's not available to you. And it starts talking to you in ways that support the new beliefs. You are enough. You're worthy. You were born worthy. Nothing took that worth away. Mistakes don't take worth away. They're learning lessons, and they create the pain for growth, and wisdom, not just knowledge.
So there's something that you said that I want to touch on. You said that people usually come to you when they've hit rock bottom and there's no other way. So I have a twofold question. The first part is, why do you think that is? And the second part is, how do you actually while you're doing your RTT, how do you actually go through and reprogram the mind? Like, what are the techniques that are used in hypnotherapy that plant or maybe take away the limiting beliefs and plant in those affirmations subconsciously?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that a lot of people come to me, they don't even realize that they don't look at it as rock bottom. They're just done, or nothing else has worked. That's usually what I hear.
So you
nothing
never
else has
get
worked.
anyone that's just I'm curious.
I do.
Oh,
I do.
okay.
I get people, I do get people who are super curious, but there's something gnawing at them that they know that they need to go deeper and wider. And they know that this is the way. They've been to therapy. They've done different things. And, they've heard about me through word of mouth, or they've heard about, other people's journeys with me, or, I've spoken to them and I tell them about it and they get super curious and it hits something that they know. They know that's the way that, they need to go deeper and wider.
There's a calling.
And they have the most remarkable results too, so because they're connected to something saying, this is something I need to do, or this is something that would be right for me. Right. So that connection in itself drives them to make the changes. They're ready to make changes, and something has blocked them along the way, but there's something that wants to make the changes. They're not addicted to the victimhood or the past or staying where they are, which is an addiction in and of itself. They are ready to break the chains, and so even if it's subconscious, they're ready to break the chains. So, when I do a 3-hour deep dive, because I include other things with the RTT. And what we do is that during the roadmap, once I get that idea of where have we been, where are we now, where are we going, I then send them what I call a primer recording. And this is not part of RTT. This is part of, Dr. Lisa Zaretsky Wellness method, where that week they listen to it every day, and they're priming the mind to get ready. One, it's getting used to my voice so that there's that familiarity and comfort level going with the rules of the mind. And then two, it is giving the mind messages that this is safe and going with the flow. And it's tapping into that part of them that wants to transform and change and release what's been getting in their way. They'll be open to it. So it's not going to be scary. The fears won't, block it. Sure, people walk in on fear. I don't know what to expect. It's, because change can be uncomfortable, and people interpret discomfort as scary or fearful. understandably so, because we're all programmed that way in our societies and our cultures. And I'm not standing on a soapbox. I get pulled into that too, and I have to catch myself. And so that primer recording, they have to listen to it every day. That's part of the agreement. And there's something, I carefully constructed that also so that certain messages are going to the mind to open the mind up and be ready for this process, be familiar with my voice, familiar with what to expect and what's going to happen during this process in the next 3 months. Mm-hmm. Really allowing the flow of, okay, you're ready now, and we're going to make that happen. And so the mind is already primed and ready. And then when they come, we, briefly talk about that experience in the last week, and then they get comfortable, and we begin. And I use the intake and the roadmap that we built, and I'm doing this a very long time. And so with all of my background, I typically know a door to go in. And I also always ask for guidance. So I have this thing before the person comes, and then before we start, God, you put me on this mission, and I am walking that mission right now. And, I am the vessel to work through right now, and work through me, and do what you need to do to bring this person to their highest and best place, and for their highest and best self, and the highest and best purpose and healing, and for mine as well. And then I clear the room with some sage, and we get started. And a lot of the times that takes over, like a higher power just takes over. It takes all of the knowledge and training that I've learned through the years and the experience through the years, and it takes that, but it then takes it on its own journey. Mm-hmm, and it's totally. Almost like everything's very instinctual and very guided. But I follow a framework of practice through RTT and other practices, like I said, that sort of come in that higher power can utilize, because it's there in my tree of knowledge, and it brings it to the tree of wisdom, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And usually it's a 3-hour. It goes through. We do an induction, so the nervous system goes to sleep, and it was at rest.
How does that look?
So it's through a process, through a hypnotic trance and then hypnotic induction. It's called an induction in hypnosis. So what I will do first is I will help them regulate, and I will help them get in touch with their breath, their autonomic nervous system. I will also help them get in touch with their proprioceptive place, through touch and hand. And then putting their hands on their heart to feel their heartbeat, so that the heart beating is now starting to connect with the rest of the nervous system, and the autonomic and the proprioceptive, with the hands and the touch and the breath. And that all starts to regulate. And I have this system and this protocol that I do as we get started, before I go into the protocol.
I think there's such a paradox here, because a lot of people, I think that hypnosis is it's taking you outside of yourself. And what you're saying is it's bringing you actually way more in touch with yourself that's so beautiful.
You just nailed it. Yes. And wow. I've done so many interviews, and it's always a pleasure to do them. And yet you just really nailed it without my saying that. That was really amazing that you just said that. Yes, it is. And I will say that when we go to the subconscious mind and we start, it is in a quantum level. We're no longer in the 2D, because you're seeing a timeline, and people whose paradigms believe in past life or other places, it doesn't mean that we go to this lifetime. Because when I say, let's go to the roots, we'll travel back, younger, lighter, whatever, to the roots, reasons, and causes of XYZ, the mind will go where it needs to go. The primer recording helps here too, but I will also reassure that we're not reliving anything. It's perfectly safe. And we're just reviewing it, and you've got this. We're reviewing it so you can make the change.
Do you find that people are typically surprised by what they uncover, or how deeply maybe that narrative has been running their life?
Oh, absolutely. And what's so interesting is that most people don't remember a lot of the session. I think I've had one client that remembered everything.
Well, then how, if they don't remember it, this
Mhm.
is my logical mind
Well,
trying
they
to
remember
understand.
some, but they don't remember the whole thing.
But it's just so deeply reprogramming their subconscious that they behave differently leaving, or
Yes, that is part of it. But we do something, so as you're going through it, you find those areas, and then we do a release. There's a protocol to release those beliefs. And I'll go one step further, and that those beliefs, whenever they started and they've been there like Velcro, they've tagged on to all these other aspects of life. So when I tell somebody to get rid of the belief, I want them to be very aware that they're also getting rid of all of those tags and Velcros. And when we uproot it or cut it out, that all of those other things are going with it. And so I take it to that next level when people work with me. That's something that's not exactly part of
Mhm.
RTT. That's something I do, knowing how people's perceptions and minds work. And I found that to be so profound that
Wow.
they do that, because all of those things, that belief has caused this, has caused that, has caused this, has
Mhm.
caused that.
It's a ripple
So we
effect.
don't have to go to all these different places. We're covering that when you release the origin.
I mean, you mentioned change being something that people are like uncomfortable with, and I 100% can and have related to that. But do you think people are too scared to really do this work and find out all of the things that are holding them back because maybe they realize, well, everything's going to change. My whole life's going to be different. My relationships might fall apart. Is that maybe a drawback to, people really doing this deep subconscious work?
Definitely, 100%. Somebody has to be ready to change and go forward and change their limiting belief systems, that it's not going to be like this drastic loss, that it's going to just flow and happen and unfold as it's supposed to be. And that's something that I work with people over that 3 month too. That's one of the reasons I made a 3 month program. I think all of these things are so important. And when I went for training, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy training, which I went for in Costa Rica, but it was through my clinical license. I'm licensed also in Florida, and Florida offered that. And so it was an immersive, intense 8 day uh, journey. And then I did a 6 month mentorship when I came back. And I had this epiphany, utilizing also my educational and clinical background, and that this framework was really important in what I thought would be really beneficial and in some ways missing for that unbelievably not just sustainable, but that sustainable progress continuing to grow, and expand, was this education piece and this intention setting in the beginning, and this not just reintegration, but this continued integration going forward, and this spiritual and self knowledge and clinical work that continues beyond, in this educational experiential learning as
Mm-hmm.
they continue to integrate. Because just like psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, with hypnotherapy, you continue, especially when you do the deep dive and regression, you continue to reintegrate. And that guidance, in my opinion, is very important from somebody who's trained and certified and has this background. And so that's what I incorporated, and why it's 3 months. And it includes all the experiential learning and application as well. So I think that's so important. And what you said earlier is this fear. And what I find so interesting is being in both worlds, and having the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy training and the hypnotherapy. Most people are more willing to ingest a substance, and it's a wild card, because then the substance is doing the work. The plant medicine or the synthetic substance is doing it. It's like you surrender to whatever, right? So you're not really in control, and it's going to go where it's going to go, right? And anything's going to happen. And it's relatively safe with somebody who is trained to guide you, whether it's macro or micro, and like microdosing or macrodose, where you do the full experience and the immersion. However, again, you're not in control anymore. And with hypnotherapy, you are. And with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy or any kind of psychedelic experience, again, you're surrendering to the substance, plant medicine or synthetic, and it's like this nonlinear immersive journey, whether it's micro or macro.
We have
With
it
the
so
hypnotherapy,
backwards.
you're you're
So
fully in control. And yet people I have seen are so again programmed to go that route because the idea of hypnotherapy scares them more, yet they're more in control. It's more guided, and the mind will take you only where it's ready to go, which makes it, in my opinion, safer.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it's really okay. I mean, there are certain restrictions for both. Like, for example, for hypnotherapy, you're dealing with brain waves. So it is contraindicated for people who have epilepsy and also for psychosis. And there's certain mental health conditions that a letter from their psychiatrist or mental health provider is required, right? So, okay. But if I'm working in collaboration with that mental health provider and they give clearance, okay, we're working as a team now. In psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, with psychedelics, again, you have to be very cautious. Like, it's contraindicated for people who are on SSRIs, and there's other contraindications also. So it's not, it's not as simple as we think. And there's a lot of information that people are doing this with that they're not aware of it. And that could be dangerous, right? So either way, you have to be informed. You have to be working with somebody that is a trained professional. And what I found interesting, like you said, the fear, people are willing to like dive into this immersive or where they're not in control, but in hypnotherapy, you are so in control and you're being guided with somebody who is, trained. Well, you should go to somebody who's certified, and the mind's going to take you wherever it needs to go. And you can keep working on it. Like, you don't have to just do one round, right? You can go again. But if you do it in the method that I do, you're also releasing a bunch of things with that root.
How many times do you meet with your clients over the 3-month period?
So that's a great question also. So I carefully did that too. And that's based on so many things, like I said, what I know about curriculum, learning, cognition, mental health, recovery, trauma-informed integration, and the psychedelic assisted framework. And so we meet 5 consecutive times. So that's over like a 2-month period. And then based on how we go about that, and it's very structured and planned and incorporates that reintegration, the learning, the making the connections, being able to start carving a new pathway, doing it in a way that resonates with them, with the tools and the strategies that they require to be able to do that, to understand that that takes intensity, frequency, and duration to build those neural pathways and neuroplasticity, as you mentioned in the introduction. Mm-hmm. Also in creating new pathways like habits, right? So in actions and in our behaviors, they develop a toolbox over that time with me. So not only are they doing this deep dive in this transformation, they're creating toolboxes that are practical and customized for them, and if I'm working with organizations that want to do this, then we'll create it in terms of the environment. But if I'm working with individuals, it's customized to the individual, right? So, and it should always be customized to the individual, even if it's within the environment. You can do both, and you do have to adapt to the environment that you're in. But when you understand how to do that from within, it becomes a whole nother ball game, right? So it's not even an adaptation; it's a flow. Mm. And so, it's not like that environment's a rock and you're hitting into the rock. That environment is there and you're just learning to flow around the rock and keep going, right? Mm-hmm. But you're not flowing around the rock and avoiding it. You're in space with it. And so it just creates a whole nother method. And it's not the method to the madness. It's the method to the miracles. And mm-hmm. So I start having people change their wording there too. And so what happens is that happens over, I would say, approximately 5 sessions, one of them being the 3-hour deep dive. And then once they're ready, and they're often ready, sometimes somebody needs a sixth, but it's very rare. We create a blueprint, and it encompasses all aspects of life, all the tools they've learned, all the discoveries they've made, all the things they've released, all the desires they have, and we put it in. I've created this blueprint, and it's very structured, and it's a guide, it's a blueprint going forward. And I hand them the baton, and now is the applied learning, right? Wow. So most people, most hypnotherapists and therapists, whatever, okay, it's always when you're doing it. Well, part of my program is applied learning. And so I give them this blueprint. We create it together. After all of that work, they have the toolbox, they have the practical strategies, and then they go off into their life as they create these new paths and these new destinies and their desires, with being fully equipped in this way and implementing it and executing it over real time. And they stay in touch with me. It's all part of it. They can text me, they can email me if they need a call, if we have to hop on. 99.9% people don't. They're ready and they go do it. And then within 4 to 6 weeks, we meet again for the follow-up and we go over all of that. And I would say also about 99% of the time, if not more, people's lives have changed and they're amazed. They're amazed at what's happened in that period of time. They're amazed when we reflect back to when they started to where they are now. It's an unbelievable transformation, and things happen. And what people notice is one of three things: either incremental changes over time, or they've had these big bang changes like, wow, I can't believe this happened. Or they'll reflect and look back and they'll be like, oh, wow, that's not anymore. That's not happening anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. My life doesn't look like that anymore. And very often it's a combination of all three. And that really comes together in that follow-up at the end of the 3 months. And then we create another blueprint. We take the old blueprint and we check off all the things that have occurred or happened or that we want to build upon. And we create another blueprint. And what people tend to do is that like a vision board, but instead of a vision board or a grateful board, they put the blueprints up, like so that they see it all the time. Right. So somebody who is, I'm passing the baton, that's what I'll tell them to do. Take your blueprint and put it where you're going to see it all the time. Okay. See all the time. It's the energy of it. It's the seeing it. And that really helps. Some people put it on their bathroom wall. Some people put it in the visor in the car. Some people put it on their journal. It really is so variable. And then when they come back, they put the blueprint next to each other. Right. And they see it. It's like that board, and they see change. They see transformation. They then, it confirms, it validates in a whole new way what's possible, what they have done, what they have created. They have created this transformation, this change, and they are more in alignment with the universe, and they see what can work. And it's incredible. And then when they come back, some people do another round. They want to go deeper. They want to go wider. They want more change. They want it to be more rapid. They want to, great, let's go. And then they'll put these blueprints next to each other and they'll see, and it's incredible. Or they'll come back for follow-up coaching for tune-ups or check-ins, and we'll revisit the blueprint and the same thing. And it's just so incredible. And it's really another tool that they use that's practical, that they can apply to sustain and to elevate that sustaining progress as they continue to sustain and create. People talk about sustainable wealth. It's the same thing. It's sustainable wealth in life, So yes, they might have sustainable financial wealth from that, but it becomes sustainable and continues to scale and grow in the same way as their transformations.
So there's something you said a little bit ago about when we're born, we forget everything that we know. And what I love what you're saying is it's with what you're doing in this work, it's almost like coming home to who you already are rather than like becoming something new. And it's getting away from all of those old programmings. And I don't know, it's just reminding me that like healing isn't just it's something to do. It's a state of being. It's not like an end goal. And I really love that. So this has been so eye-opening and something that I'm actually really interested in. Not that I was surprised that I was interested in it, but like, it's just more like, whoa, like, yes, this is really like, wow stuff. So let's get messy with this mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Mentally, what would be one thing that you see as a common core belief that people are carrying around and that's keeping them stuck?
We're not good enough. Everyone thinks they're not good enough. And then I would add on that things are not available to them because they're not good enough, and that they don't belong because they're not good enough. And those are the three main ones. And I believe, and that could be my limiting belief, but what I've seen and a pattern and the data shows me is that we think we're not good enough.
That's a good one. Relatable. Very relatable. Emotionally, how do you help someone feel safe enough to address that emotional truth that comes out in the session?
Connecting to themselves, and that starts with the heart, connecting to their heart and connecting their heart and their mind, and that mind-heart cohesion. I find that that's critical. And that has to take place first, from my experience, before they can even connect to the spiritual. In order to get to that place, the emotional piece, like a lot of people will try to bring spirituality in first. Even in AA, it's like that whole, the first step is reconnecting to yourself, reconnecting that mind and heart together to be able to reintegrate emotionally, that and be able to regulate yourself emotionally, and be able to say, I can lean into what's uncomfortable. I can lean into this and persevere. I can lean into this and grow. And I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Even if it's uncomfortable, I'm okay. And uncomfortable is just that, and that's a program in itself, because pain is a construct of the mind. That's why the heart and the mind, cohesiveness, in my opinion, is so important. Because if you can remember that in your heart, and you know that that's going on in my mind, right? And you could also learn to let it go and just feel this peace within your heart.
And spiritually, so when someone does clear out this noise and those old subconscious patternings and programmings that they've come into this lifetime with or learned, what do you find is the biggest shift that happens in themselves?
One, I think that they realize there's a connection, that connection we were talking about, that mind, heart, spiritual, God, higher power connection. They start to see that as like not only real, but necessary. And that they start to see that they were disconnected and fragmented, and they start to feel more whole because that's reconnected. And that's really the energy and the pattern and the labyrinth and the blueprint and the everything that you think about, all the wiring. It's there, like everything was so disconnected, and they start to see everything coming back together. They start to see everything come back to whole, and they feel more whole as a result of that. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, guys. Well, you heard it here with Dr. Lisa. So if you've been living with beliefs that you're not enough, or that change has to be hard or difficult, or that healing is just for some people, I hope this episode has really cracked open a new window or a new way of seeing that wellness isn't just something you work towards, but that it's something that you really reclaim and come home to. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today on Inside Out. And where can people find you?
Oh, it was such an honor and such a pleasure. Thank you. So you can go to my website. It's www.zaretsky-wellness.com. And you can go through the website. There's a place that you can fill something out, and we can set up a time to chat, a complimentary 15-minute time to chat and see, how I can help you and how Zaretsky Wellness can best serve you. I am also on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, it's at Zaretsky Wellness. And on Facebook, there's Lisa Zaretsky or at Zaretsky Wellness, both. And on LinkedIn, there's Dr. Lisa Zaretsky and Zaretsky Wellness. And right now, those are the social media places to find me and follow me. And if you get on my mailing list, you'll get a monthly newsletter with, different pearls of wisdom. And I'm starting to do something more weekly now with different pearls of wisdom and reflection. And so if you're on my mailing list, you'll get that too.
I love that. Pearls of wisdom. Well, all of this will be linked in the show notes, and you guys know where to find me at _insideout.podcast. Have a great week, guys. Bye.